1675 hours, 10 seconds.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for tuning in to the 260. Today we're going to be talking about complacency, and you have the whole EMS division here. You got Chiefs Cody Brooks and Jonathan Flickinger. You got Caitlin Kennedy and Caitlin Carper and myself, Taylor Finn.
All right, yeah. So today we're going to kind of hash out complacency in the workforce. So, what is complacency in our eyes? And for me, when I think of like that definition, I think of it as when do we decide that learning stops and we stop pursuing our passion for that career? What do you guys think?
So I'd agree with what you just said, because when I look at complacency, to me, it's kind of an unconscious accepting and assuming that you have all of the needed knowledge and information.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that problem is accepting that status quo is sufficient and not being aware to changes or potential better processes that might be in place. I've done it this way all my life. I'm going to continue to do it this way, and I'm very used to and know what I'm doing.
Being closed-minded, kind of.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think that's a great explanation of complacency. There's also the age-old, from the fire department side of it, EMS as well. This is how we've always done it, not wanting to change. So I've always done it this way. We've always done it. Well, why do we need to do it this way? So that's, I think, another thing we need to look at as well.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree with that.
Fire and EMS are kind of the same. We don't like change, but we don't like the way things are as they are today, so I feel like it's a comfort thing as well. If we're comfortable, we're not willing to challenge ourselves. We're not willing to step out of that box and try something different. So complacency is definitely a real thing. I think we're all a little guilty of it at some point in our careers.
Yeah. When I think of it, I think of like just, I don't know, no one realizes they're being complacent. It's not a conscious decision. I think it's just when you stop applying yourself for whatever reason. Like everyone will have different reasons. Like I don't know, their priorities get mixed up, or they don't allocate enough energy into maybe what they should be. Like, I don't know, their craft, their work. Like, you're at work for a whole 24 hours or 12 hours or whatever. It's a long time not to be applying yourself. Like, there's learning opportunities everywhere. And I guess when you just stop paying attention, you just kind of go with the flow, don't want to rock the boat.
That also can lead to, I don't think a lot of people realize it, that complacency can be deadly. I mean, especially in our career path. I mean, complacency in a factory setting is completely different than complacency within fire EMS. That if we don't learn and continue our learning, that can lead to someone's life, whether it be our crewmates or our patients eventually. So.
Yeah, well, that's it.
Yeah, and like when you say that, like I think about, when I was just getting out of paramedic school, right? You went through all of that schooling and you have all of that knowledge, and then you go and you're like, okay, now I got to transition from my book knowledge to now I got to apply it out in the world. And I shouldn't say you don't have room to learn new things. Like you've already been jam-packed and you're still understanding what you learned. And at some point, like I know for me personally, there was a point in my career where, I should have known something and I didn't, because I wasn't going back and like relearning, because I thought, oh, well, I'm going to focus on being a good leader, and totally like got caught off guard with that. And that's a good way of how that could be deadly.
Yeah.
I feel like we have complacency. I get calls on a pretty regular basis in my position, to where people are seeking more training or to brush up on those perishable skills. Sometimes we get complacent even with just the psychomotor skills of our job. Well, I know how to innovate. I've done it for over a decade. I feel good. I feel confident in my skills. I don't need that airway training aid to make its round again. But then, when we do mandatory airway training or simulation training, we forget how to do the little things, those perishable skills. And it's, you see it in providers' eyes all the time. You're like, oh, I need to brush up on this here a little bit. So I feel like we all are complacent in our knowledge base and our skill base, and we just have to challenge each other and challenge yourselves to fight through that.
I like what you said, challenge each other too, because I think it's really hard to notice when you're being complacent in something. It's like, how do you know what you don't know? And so, like, you kind of have what's the word? Like, I don't know, you kind of owe it to your friends and your crewmates, your peers, to, like, if you see something that maybe they could be doing a different way, like, you should say something in, a constructive, kind way, like just like you would want them to say that to you. If you saw me doing something in a way that maybe I shouldn't be doing, like, I would want you to say something. I don't know, just as I was listening to you guys talking, I'm thinking about my own circumstances with complacency, and like a lot of times pride will kind of get in the way. And so, like, you need to be able to listen when other people are, trying to help you out in one way or another.
So I think it's interesting as you guys, like, I'm listening to everybody interact and communicate about this. I really agree with Katie as we're sitting there talking that, yeah, it's going to really truly become potentially life and death. I agree with Chief Brooks' kind of statements as he's sitting there looking at, and everybody kind of gets into this habit. And you just start to kind of drift away from certain things. And then, as Taylor said, our crews, the responsibility we have to our crews, also the responsibility we have to the community in general and those people that we're trying to take care of. Some of those simple things, I know, like you're talking about diminished skill sets potentially, complacency-wise. I even go back just to the start of the day, an EMS medical checkoff in the morning. We're all so used to, I just talked to the guy from yesterday, the lady from yesterday, that communicates that, everything was fine. Everything's still in the bag. Okay, great. Well, then when I get on scene, I just checked off that box really quick. I didn't go through it. I've been guilty of that, where I'm like, oh, it's fine. I know who just came off the shift and everything's okay. That sets us up for failure in the long run. So a very simple, complacent act of that could have a pretty large ramification later in the day.
Yeah.
I've had that exact example happen to me when I worked my county service years ago. I didn't check out my life pack, the way I should have, and I trusted the off-going crew. And then I went on a run later that afternoon, and I didn't have a critical piece of equipment that I needed on my chest pain patient, and then I was screwed. Like, luckily I didn't have a bad outcome with that patient, and it didn't go any farther than that, but it could have been potentially very dangerous for that patient.
I also really appreciate too, like, a couple of people have already shared a story just like what you did as well. I think it's hard to have this conversation. I think it's hard for all of us to actually own that and say, yes, I have been complacent at different times. I know when I'm not as attentive with certain things that I should be. I can tell that, and then I get worried about that I need to readjust my priorities. But it is not an easy thing, I think, to communicate about this, because it is potentially a prideful thing, as you said, Taylor, or also it is something where a fearful thing that I am trying not to show that I may not be in complete control at all times. I hate to tell all of you this, but we're kind of all human beings, and that happens.
Yeah,
So-
no, that's a good way to look at it.
So what are, like, in thinking about this, I want to give people like some warning signs. Like, when can we like pick up?
I would say when you feel yourself getting stagnant, you're so comfortable doing something, it becomes stagnant, Like you said, Chief, when you check off the bags in the morning, like, oh, rookie will get it, I've been doing this for 10, 20 years, the stuff's in the bag, we'll find it if something comes up. I think a warning sign is when you feel yourself kind of disengaging, if you will, a little bit from those morning checks, or disengaging from, a training coming up, or you feel yourself, I'm going to maneuver my schedule around here a little bit and put a vacation day during these trainings, or, whatever. You feel yourself getting stagnant. I feel like that's when you should challenge yourself.
I want to piggyback off of what you just said there. So key point at the very beginning of what his answer there was, the rookie will get it.
Right.
Okay, it's not just the rookies, in my opinion, it's not just the rookie's responsibility to check. it's not just the ALS person's responsibility to go through those EMS bags either. Chief Flickinger, as an EMT basic, is working with me as a paramedic today. Yeah, I'm the ALS guy. I'm getting my 4% more, right? But he needs to know where my stuff is. So if I say I need an IV start, I need this, I need that. That's his responsibility just as much as it is mine to know where that stuff is in the bag as well. So, it can be complacent as like that as well. So, everybody from an EMR all the way up to our paramedics need to be checking the bags daily, including our rookies.
To kind of spin that too, when you look on the fire side, you're going to run through a cabinet and you're going to expect that rookie to know everything that's in that cabinet. How do you know that unless you know what's in your cabinet? Why is it any different when it's a medical bag? So it's the same concepts that, we have expectations that these rookies know where everything is at. But that starts with us. We have to know where everything's at. We have to truly know our equipment to be able to help direct and learn and educate. So we have to stay up on that, especially with the ever-changing world of the medical environment.
You definitely seen it during our 2024 simulations. We were well over 100 simulations in the field this year, which is awesome. I'm super proud of the team for that. You had definitely seen some of the complacency where folks didn't know where stuff was in the bag. They didn't know a protocol as well. You and I, Chief and I, talked this morning about just being complacent with a little bit of our SOPs, SOGs, and our just standing orders. It's a healthy thing to go over those. I'm very guilty of that. I'm very complacent with my standing orders. I feel as though, I've done the same test. I've been through this protocol several times. And then Katie just went through and worked really hard to put the new final touches on this year's standing orders. And I found myself challenging myself to go through every single page line by line. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I forgot about this, or the order of calcium versus bicarb and the crush injury protocol. And like, we all were on the team that made that protocol, and it's like, which one do you give first? So it's a healthy thing to challenge yourself and beat that complacency, because again, once you're comfortable and you get stagnant with that, it's a dangerous slippery slope of where you can go. So
Ultimately, it comes down to, I feel like kind of one of the things that we're kind of saying here is it comes down to accountability, right? And
Personal accountability, though, correct?
yeah, personal accountability, like making sure that, you are aware that, hey, I'm slipping, and, or hey, I'm in a chief's role, or I'm in an educator's role. And even though I'm in those roles, I still need to make sure I'm up on that stuff.
Along with the accountability as well. We take pride in being a firefighter, and we're prideful of our station and the way our apparatus look, and our gear and all of that thing. I think we also need to be prideful that we know our protocols, and that while some of you didn't get into being a firefighter for EMS, right? Like, it's just part of the job requirement. We still need to be prideful that we are EMS clinicians and firefighters. So, whether you wanted to be an EMT or an advanced EMT or a paramedic or not, you are. Mm-hmm. So I think we still need to say, hey, I got this far. I need to keep it up and be prideful that you are where you are.
I like to think, this is jumping ahead a little, like talking about what can you do about it, but every now and then I kind of do like a check-in. Like, I feel like you're only as, I like to play little games, like psychological games with myself to kind of motivate me or whatever. And also like, okay, I'm only as strong as like my weakest point as a clinician. Mm-hmm. And so like, what is that weakest point? What is the thing that I don't want to study right now? What is the thing that if I got this in a sim, I would kind of shit my pants a little? Like, I don't want to experience this call. And that's probably the thing I should study. Mm-hmm. Sure. And that's usually a good way for me to kind of, no, I'm not saying I'm great at it by any means, but I think a lot of times it leads me to some things that they're dusty, things I've forgotten about, protocols that I haven't done in a while. Or
everybody has something they're not comfortable with.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like, we're not doctors, right? We practice. So like, I am not, I know how to read a 12 lead, but I couldn't tell you like the 12 lead test that Taylor sent out last month or the month before that. Like, that was really intimidating looking at it, because I was like, whoo, I'm not the greatest at 12 leads. I'm not the greatest at cardiology. So that, like you said, that made me want to brush up on it. I need to pull out my protocols.
If
and
you're going to
look
pick your
over.
calls, right?
Yeah,
Like you can be
absolutely.
like, well, I'm only going to go on the trauma calls. I like that. Like, well, there's someone working on an issue right now, and they're going to call in your area, and you're going to go. And what do you like? Are you going to be ready for that or not? Or are you going to just kind of, I don't know, act like you know what you're doing? But
We can
the
only
patient
fake,
might not know, but
yeah, we
you
can only
know.
fake it till
Yeah.
we make it so much.
Yeah.
I think it's important though, why we're on this platform and we're discussing what is the EMS division, what are we actively doing to fight complacency in 2025 on the Fort Wayne Fire Department? What are we actively doing? We're going to continue with simulations training. I think a lot of people really like sims training. It's getting your hands on stuff. I've heard great feedback about it. We're going to continue some one-on-one ALS check-ins with some of our newer providers, anybody with 5 years or less experience. We're actively going to go in the field and sit down with them. You know, we're going to try to do that quarterly, every 6 months, but it is definitely a goal of the EMS division to get out in the field and make sure that we are taking care of our own, make sure that we're comfortable in our skill set. But what are some other things? You know, you mentioned the 12 lead quiz. For me, very intimidating as well. I haven't been to a Bob Page class in several years. So I was like, oh my, that's definitely something that on my end I need to brush up on as well, is because I haven't looked at a 12 lead class.
It was a tough one
Yeah.
too. I have the liberty of saying like, oh, I made it, so I didn't really necessarily test myself. But that was a challenging test, so I wouldn't take it too much.
But definitely, it's a challenge to fight complacency.
It puts
You're
it
gonna
into
challenge yourself.
perspective. Like
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much I had forgotten
Right.
Yeah.
paramedic school
Sure.
until I looked at it and I was like, junctional rhythms. I haven't seen that since my textbook.
I thought only VTAC mattered.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing too from a lot of you guys as we're talking about this, there's two key words that keep coming up in a lot of things that I've been reading lately, which is curiosity and awareness. So what I'm hearing in this discussion with this 12 lead is there's curiosity getting brought to you by that test. So cheers, Taylor, for putting that test together, because obviously it's made some people think. Also, on the flip side of that too, a little bit, is that awareness factor, where you're sitting there doing a true assessment of yourself. And again, it goes back to what Caitlin had said with personal accountability. So those two things got you to where you're at. Now you have to do the personal accountability. Now you have to do a plan of action. How are you going to change whatever that might be at the moment? Like Chief Brooks alluded to, we were talking this morning a little bit about SOPs. One of the things that I'm doing right now, I have literally 2 things that I come in and I read every single day that I walk into the office that's directly off an SOP. I'm going to do that for a few weeks because I know it was something that I kept forgetting. And I've been doing that probably for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I'm getting older, so it's taking a little bit longer to get that sunk in the head, but it's happening. So you just got to figure out, it doesn't have to be anything complicated. You just need to make some adjustment and changes.
With what Chief Brooks said for what we want to do for 2025, I know we've discussed this as a division, but one thing that I'm going to strive to do I want everybody to take the personal accountability, but also take that accountability as a crew. So I would like to, I don't know, we haven't discussed on how we're going to do it yet, but make sure that our BLS people are backing up our ALS. And they are not, our BLS crews are not becoming complacent. So I am going to figure out something with our crew here that, I guess, I don't know.
Just to ensure they've got the confidence that they need
absolutely,
to move
because
forward.
we're only as strong as our BLS partners. Everybody knows what's the first 3 steps of our primary assessment, right? ABCs, that's a BLS thing. So whether or not I'm getting paid 4% more doesn't matter. It's all BLS before ALS. So we need to fight that complacency where, well, you're here now, you're the medic, it's all you. It's us as a crew. So that's my thing that I'm going to work on. I want to work on with the department is.
I love that.
Yeah, I really love that. And like sitting there thinking about that, like, one of the things is our BLS people get complacent because they're like, oh, I got a paramedic, right? What happens when that paramedic, they're off the rig for whatever reason?
Yeah, special teams or they get, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now you're
Like
right in
something
a crew of
engine,
3.
Truck
Yeah.
goes out, or
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Well, I think what are some things that we can we kind of hashed it out already, like some things that we can be better, challenging ourselves, trying to figure out where those weak links are. Is there anything else? I would like to challenge like our officers, be like, hey, get in those protocol books, get in those bags, like make sure that you're comfortable with it. Because again, even though, yes, you're in a leadership role, like you've worked your way up to that, you've already done those things, like you don't necessarily, I shouldn't say you don't have to do those things. You have other responsibilities, but, challenge you guys to even go out and get in those bags with those rookies.
Sure. Constantly put out some new content. There are several pages that the Fort Wayne Fire Department has internally that information is shared. I'll just give a shout out. Captain Bale is constantly putting out content on a social media site, a Fort Wayne Fire Department site that deals with training. You can tell he is super passionate about it. There's a lot of good conversation that is created out of some of his posts. Lieutenant Darren Wilson has just put out something on that same social media platform that the fire department has. And I just think it's great because it generates awesome dialogue, and ultimately we're fighting complacency with education and kind of we champion for each other, right? But you can just a shout out to those two. Those are the most recent ones I can think about. Challenge your crews.
Exactly. I mean, like, you're in a leadership position as a company officer for a reason. Like, our administration has thought that you are good enough to be a lieutenant or a captain.
Sure.
So your crew is looking up to you. So
Mhm.
let's, give them something to look forward to. Pull those books out. Let's say, hey, this is what we're going to do today, So
And don't be scared to ask questions.
absolutely.
Right.
You know what, as you say that, I'm thinking of some of the really good officers I've been involved in, and those individuals, one of the best attributes one of the officers had was his ability to ask questions.
Mhm.
He was legitimately asking some information, but I also know that he was trying to drive us, make us think a little bit more. But yeah, you just get comfortable with that crew and talk.
I think a key thing with that as a company officer is you don't have to know everything either. So if you don't know, like if you're reviewing that chest pain protocol and you're like, why do I have to do a 12 lead on these patients? You're like, I don't know. You don't know what you don't know. So I've always prided myself in if I don't know the answer, I'll find an answer for you and I'll get back to you. Whether that's calling one of us in the EMS division and saying, hey, we don't understand this. This is my crew. This question came up today during training. That's absolutely fine if you don't know the answer.
Sure.
I'll find it and I'll get it back to you.
Put it on the whiteboard. You see Kelly Hurd, he does that. He puts stuff on the whiteboard. He puts save next to it, and I've seen other company officers build on some of the information he's put on the whiteboard. He's another one that will post things that just educational opportunities, trying to fine tune each other.
I like what you said, about you thought of specific chief, like a specific individual who excelled in your mind, and I don't know, I imagine that you've probably taken things away from that individual throughout the years. And that's another one of the little psychological games I'll play. What would Barry Van Camp do in this situation? Like an esteemed paramedic, how would he handle that? Or it could be anyone you guys think of, but someone you look up to for one reason or another, or you admire their work ethic or the way they carry themselves. How would they handle that thing that I just mishandled? And then just kind of, I don't know, really apply yourself, I guess. I kind of scenarioed in my head that way. Next time, might go a little bit better or differently.
And I think one thing to take off of that is we all learn from our mistakes. I know I'm a big component of that as well, is I will make a mistake, right? And then I'll remember it for next time and be like, oh yeah, I forgot the last time I did that, I did this. So I got complacent, I made a mistake, I learned from it, and I will try not to make the mistake again. Can't guarantee it, but.
I think we hit on it pretty good today. What do you guys think? Anything to
Absolutely.
add?
It's something we could talk about for a long, long time.
Yeah.
I think that everyone had some great points.
Again, just want to challenge everyone out there. challenge yourself, dig into those things that you don't want to dig into or you don't feel totally comfortable with. And again, like, ask questions, go to people, be like, hey, you know, even us, like, and when I do my one-on-ones, I'm like, hey, is there something that you don't know that you don't necessarily want people to know that you don't know this? I'm like, I want to help you know these things and feel better and be a better connection and stuff. So, well, thank you guys for listening today, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, guys.